Welcome everyone to Boston and the 2019 Stanley Cup Final. For those watching either on the NHL Network, Sportsnet or TVA, welcome as well. And on this Memorial Day, as we come together to watch what we all believe is the greatest spectacle in sports, we also take a moment to thank and honor the men and women of the military who have given their lives in service to their countries. We remember and are grateful for their service. Before Deputy Commissioner Bill Daley and I take your questions, I want to spend a few moments recapping what has been an incredible season in playoffs. Obviously, the Boston Bruins are back in the final, this for the third time in the last 9 years. And congratulations to Jeremy Jacob, Charlie Jacobs, Cam Neely, Don Sweeney, Bruce Cassidy, Captain Dano Chara, and the rest of the players, and obviously the entire organization. The St. Louis Blues returned to the final for the first time in 49 years against the same opponent that they battled nearly 5 decades ago. Congratulations to Tom Stillman, Chris Zimmerman, Doug Armstrong, Craig Berube, Captain Alex Pietrangelo, the rest of the players and the organization as well. It is, to say the least, a tremendous accomplishment to make it this far, and now only 4 wins stands between these two franchises and the ultimate prize, the most iconic trophy in all the sports. While there are things that are always debatable in our game, and we will certainly get into one of those issues, let's first focus on some indisputable facts that detail why the NHL is in the strongest position in our history. As you all know, the Board of Governors formally approved our 32nd franchise in December. Seattle was the largest U.S. city without an NHL or NBA team, and obviously that won't be the case anymore. The ownership and management group in Seattle is making great progress with their arena and, frankly, on all other fronts, including the development of a team name. Having had the privilege of traveling to the Pacific Northwest multiple times over the last few months, I can tell you the people there can't wait for NHL hockey. And it's easy to see why. They're excited because they watched from afar and saw how remarkable this season was on the ice. There were a record number of goals scored during the regular season, 7,664. Teams combined to average 6 goals per game, our highest in more than a decade. And it probably won't surprise you to know that our research shows that across the U.S. and Canada, more than 80% of our fans say they are pleased with that development and the state of our game. The individual accomplishments this season were similarly striking. Nikita Kucherov had the highest individual point total in 23 years. And for the first time in 7 years, we had 2 50-goal scorers, Alex Ovechkin and Leon Draisaitl. And so much of the scoring increase was driven by our young players. 6 of the top 10 point scorers were 25 years of age or younger, and in total, 28% of the goals this year were scored by players aged 23 or under. The increase in scoring is paired with the best pace of play in sports. We have the most and fastest action in the shortest period of time. Physicality is still an important part of our game. Our fans want to see it, and the average number of hits per game were up year over year. Competitive balance is at an all-time high. There were 138 multi-goal comebacks during the regular season, which was the most in our history. 10% of our games featured a tying goal in the last 5 minutes of a game, and 71% of the minutes played this year were tied or within 1 goal. Now taking a wider view, for the 7th straight year, at least 5 teams made the playoffs that missed out in the previous season. As you certainly know, the Blues were in last place in the entire league on January 3rd of this year. Now they're in the Stanley Cup Final, and that's nothing short of incredible. Every single team, and as important, their fans, come into a season believing they can make the playoffs, and as we've seen, once you make the playoffs, anything can happen. Just so you know, I looked at many of the published pre-playoff predictions and brackets, and clearly most of you were as amazed as I was to watch what unfolded over the last 6 weeks. But take comfort in the fact that you weren't alone. Only 3 out of the 1.42 million brackets submitted correctly predicted the first 3 rounds of our bracket challenge. The drama of both the regular season and the playoffs has translated to incredibly strong fan interest. During this regular season, Hockey Night in Canada and Wednesday night national games on Sportsnet and CBC were up. On TVA during the regular season, ratings jumped 12%, and on this side of the border, ratings on NBC and NBC Sportsnet were also up year over year. Cities across the league were more engaged than ever. Denver, Raleigh, Columbus, St. Louis, and Dallas all saw record ratings. Night in and night out during the playoffs, in market after market, NBC or NBC Sportsnet was the highest rated network when the hometown team was playing. Nationally, in the U.S., this is one of the most watched Stanley Cup playoffs on record up to this point, which proves that viewers aren't just drawn to their local teams. Our fans are interested in storylines, our stars, and the quality of hockey being played. That strength also extends to our digital properties and social platforms. Engagement with our playoff content across NHL.com, our app, and YouTube are up nearly 60% year over year. And not all of that engagement was to see Mitch Marner's Toronto Maple Leafs ice cream soup video, but that was a big hit. What it really comes down to is that we're engaging fans, new and old, young and old, on their terms. And that's a big reason why the business is as strong as it's ever been, with more than a dozen significant partnership renewals or new relationships. Earlier this year, as I think you may all recall, our first 3 league-wide gaming partners joined us, MGM, FanDuel, and William Hill. We announced today the multi-year extension of our long-standing partnership with Ticketmaster, and we'll be expanding our collaboration to use their new technology, which they call Presence, which is their next-generation ticketing and venue access control system. While I don't think it's necessary to recap in detail our special events like the Winter Classic in South Bend, many of you were there and you can attest to what a success it was, I do want to point out that we are very excited for what's to come next season. For the 2020 Bridgestone NHL Winter Classic at the Cotton Bowl, ticket sales have been incredible. 80,000 tickets sold in record time. It was our second most successful pre-sale after the 2014 Winter Classic at the Big House in Michigan. We're equally excited about our other outdoor games, Air Force Academy, and the 2019 Tim Hortons NHL Heritage Classic in Regina. Both are poised to be tremendous successes like all of our outdoor games. Our games in Europe next year, in Prague, Stockholm, Berlin, and Lausanne, are basically sold out, actually sold out in a matter of days, even hours in some cases. And speaking of Europe, our first ever dedicated broadcast window for primetime European games, Game of the Week, drove higher viewership across the continent. And I also want to take a moment to point out some initiatives that we undertook to bring people closer to the game here in North America. Our Black History Month celebration included a mobile museum for the first time, honoring the contributions to the game of trailblazers like Hall of Famer Willie O'Ree. Our partners at Sportsnet brought Rogers Hometown Hockey to the Enoch Cree Nation, which was the first indigenous community to host this hockey festival. And that weekend, the Aboriginal Peoples Television Network televised the first ever national NHL game in Plains Cree language. Simply stated, expanding and engaging our fan base in new and different ways, inclusiveness, is a priority. That's what's also driving our significant investment in new technology. Puck and player tracking was tested for the first time in the regular season in Las Vegas during the Consumer Electronics Show, and broadcast integration of that technology debuted at the All-Star Game in San Jose. Tracking continues to be on course for a league-wide rollout during the 1920 season, and things are progressing as we expected in that regard. As a result of our collaboration with SAP and Apple, our in-game coaching app was introduced this year, delivering real-time data right to the bench. What we've shown over the years as a league is that we are flexible and willing to constantly evolve and improve. Along those lines of self-evaluation and adaptation, I know these playoffs have featured some controversial moments. To be clear, we have the best officials in the world, and we all know that they have an extraordinarily difficult job. That is the very reason that we were the first sports league to implement a centralized replay review process. It's the basis upon which other systems across the sports landscape were based. And we already have extensive video review. We review every goal and non-goal, over 8,000 a season. We review offsides, we review goaltender interference, and as we have learned, particularly with the Coach's Challenge, implementation of these extensions is not always easy and can prove to be challenging. But clearly, what we already do still may not be enough. The ability to review and parse plays down to the millisecond has become both a blessing and a curse. If we are to extend video replay, and we will be looking at that possibility, we must find the right balance when it comes to how much more to use and when to use it without affecting the flow, pace, and excitement of our game. And perhaps most important, we've got to have a system that enables us to be consistent. This is the challenge, and it is a challenge we are focused on and we will meet. We are constantly reviewing the league's replay and rules with our general managers. Replay was again a topic of discussion at our last general managers meeting in March, as it has been virtually at every meeting for the last 2 decades. And it certainly will be discussed at the general managers meeting next month. The process, as I think you all know, to make a rule change, including video replay, requires approval by the general managers, the competition committee, which includes the players, and ultimately the Board of Governors. What I can say with absolute certainty is that everyone involved is going to take a hard look at this issue in the upcoming months. No one should doubt that we want to get it right. The fundamental question is the it, when to intervene, and what are the instances that require doing so, and of course, how to do it without destroying the fabric and essential elements of our game. We want every call to be correct. Everyone does. And while we seek to minimize errors, the speed of our game, unprecedented in its history, and the advances in technology, also unprecedented, have conspired to make the world's best officials the focus of every call and non-call, which no one can do in real time as well as they do. This is not a complaint, this is not an excuse, and we're not whining about it. It's simply a recognition of a challenge which we will address sensibly, appropriately, and in the best interests of the game and those who love it. Of course, in the 102-year history of our game, there have been some controversial calls, but we also know that over the course of that century plus of hockey, ultimately the strongest and most committed teams overcome adversity. Today, and for the next 2 weeks, what matters most is what we will watch as these two conference champions face off. They ran the gauntlet of an intense regular season and playoffs, and here we find them at the Stanley Cup final. It takes a special group to finish the climb to the top of this mountain. We're looking forward to a great conclusion to an extraordinary season. We wish both organizations good luck and hope that all of you will enjoy this ride. Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly and I will now be happy to take your questions.